Hello there, and welcome back to another video. This week we're doing another episode of my Fandoms Series. I'm pretty sure this is episode 5. I'm pretty sure it's episode 5. It's been a minute since I did the last one. This series, just to catch people up, the series is a series where I'm doing fan art of shows or books or movies or whatever it is that has really impacted me over the years, and I got really involved in like the fandom side of things, so fan art, fan fiction, that sort of thing. And I started off going in chronological order of things I really got into, but at this point it's just kind of a jumble of things that I've really enjoyed. And so first episode was Dragon Ball Z, second episode was Naruto, third episode was Harry Potter, fourth episode was Star Wars, and now we're on episode 5, and I'm going to be doing fan art for Avatar the Last Airbender. So after that huge intro is over, I'm going to be painting on the iPad Pro 10.34 inch using Procreate, and I'm just going to be drawing Katara and Zuko being actiony and awesome. And yeah, this was a weird painting because it was like my first I've done other paintings on Procreate, but this was my first really ambitious one, it felt like, on the iPad using Procreate. But yeah, so Avatar, it's kind of funny to think about Avatar because originally when I planned to do this fandom series, I didn't really have this show in my planned episode list, which is kind of ridiculous when I think about it afterwards. But I started watching just on YouTube, just video reviews, kind of going back and analysing everything about the show, basically, from the politics, from the culture, to the storytelling, to all these things that was just getting analysed here on YouTube. And I just got down that spiral and I got the tickle for it again. So since I got the tickle for this show again, I decided to go look for some new fan fiction to read for it. And then just scrolling down the fanfics on just fanfiction.net or Archive of Our Own, it hit me. It's I've read most of these already, and it's just sort of slipped my mind. So yeah, so I decided to include this series in my fandom series, which is kind of ridiculous that I didn't think of having this show in here to begin with, because it's an amazing, absolutely mind-blowingly good show. But yeah, so the way that I found this show is kind of funny, because I remember I was living in France when this first started coming out, and so I didn't really watch as much Nickelodeon at the time, because I remember the Disney Channel I could get in English, but Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, those were stuck in French. And even though I could speak French, and I can sort of speak French, I would prefer to watch, my children's TV, because I was fairly young at the time. I would prefer to watch my children's TV just in English. If Spanish had been an option at the time, I think I would have also preferred Spanish, but because of that, I kind of wasn't really watching too much Nickelodeon or cartoons at the time. It was more just, I remember there was Yu-Gi-Oh! On an English-speaking channel and a Transformers in an English-speaking channel, but for Avatar, it was actually one of the first shows I ever watched on YouTube. And this must have been 2006 even, where they used to upload episodes, episode part 1, episode part 2, episode part 3, because they had an upload limit. So they would split the episodes into 3 parts and then have continuous episodes. And I watched until the end of the second season, until Earth, on YouTube while I lived in France. And then I went 2 years without seeing or hearing anything about it when I lived in Brazil. And eventually they did this whole marathon where they aired the entirety of book 3 3 times in a row across a weekend. And of course I watched it at that time, and it was really good, really satisfying. Then afterwards I got a little bit more comfortable on the internet, and I was able to rewatch it and find it again and download it and all those sort of things. Does anyone remember FrostWire and LimeWire? Yeah, that was a thing back then. Don't be a pirate, kids. Pirates get sent to the plank or something, I don't know. But yeah, I watched it kind of spaced out, not as consecutive. It wasn't a regular part of my schedule. But then I think it was around the same time that I started reading Star Wars fanfiction, because with Star Wars fanfiction was when I really just broke out of my staple series. I remember that this was a thing that I really enjoyed, so let's go read some fanfiction for it. And then I was kind of overwhelmed by how much Zuko and Katara content there was, because I was hunting for fanfiction originally to read Zuko and my stories, and then I was kind of weirded out by how many people shipped Zutara, but then I decided I got over myself eventually. Like, it took a couple of months before I dipped my toe into this ship, and then I just started seeing what everyone else was seeing when they watched the show. And I'm still kind of, when it comes to ships, I'm a fan of all ships, you could say. Like, there's no ship that ever really was something that I would say no, definitely not. If it's told correctly, if it's written correctly, then I'm a fan of it, to be honest. But there's a lot of really good stories written about Zuko and Katara, which I really enjoyed finding. And of course, with my fandom series, one of the things I like to do is to put in the description of these videos my favorite fanfics for the particular series I'm talking about. And I'm not sure how many exactly I'm going to include in this description, because there's quite a few that are really good, but I know for sure one of them I'm going to include in the description. It's called Embers, and it's a really, really, really long story. It's like super long. It's not the longest I've read, but it's fairly long. It's like over 400,000 words, I'm fairly sure. It might be close to 600,000, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Really long story, but really, really good. So good. It builds on like the spirituality of bending. It builds on like sort of how people can toe into the territory of another element through their element. For example, sand bending that they do in the series is earth bending, but also could sort of be air bending, and Toph couldn't really do any sand bending to begin with. Later on she started getting the hang of it, and then she invented metal bending. But then if you can imagine, like, steam bending, is steam bending fire bending or water bending? Is magma bending fire bending or earth bending, that sort of thing? And like, this story like really goes into that, and it's super interesting. And yeah, that one for sure I would recommend you check out if you like this show and you have enough time to sink into a really long story. What else? What I love about this show more than anything is the characters, of course. Who doesn't love the characters? Toph's amazing, Zuko's amazing, Iroh's amazing, Aang, Sokka and Katara are super endearing. My favourite character is, of course, everyone's favourite character, Zuko, but second to Zuko is Iroh and Toph. I really like the two of them as well. And yeah, just in general, I don't get why this entire clip is upside down, just side note, but recording on the iPad woos me. Oh no, it's right side up again. Lovely. But yeah, the character's really amazing. I just absolutely love the way that they told Zuko's story, and then watching all these analysis videos on YouTube, you can kind of see how they established Zuko as, like, I don't remember the actual name for it, but it's the antagonist that's also protagonist, and then later it turns into whatever. It's like, he has like one of the best redemption arcs in all of storytelling as far as I know. I really, really like the way that they did that. And it's also like just the overall aesthetic and style of this show is just, it really makes me happy to think about it, and it really amazes me that something like this was created. It's just, I wouldn't replace it for the world. To talk a little bit about Legend of Korra, I actually didn't really get into Legend of Korra that much. Then afterwards, like after it was done, I watched it, but I didn't really get obsessed with it. At first I was like super excited when I saw like the love triangle, and how like just in the first season they were already playing a lot with romance. I was like, they understand that their core audience has grown up, and so they're like playing to that a little bit. But then it's just sort of, I don't know, it hit me the second time I watched season 1, because I had to rewatch it just to like rewatch it like afterwards, just to sort of see what was what. And it hit me that it's just like, it didn't make me feel good to watch. Like the whole time I was just sort of either cringing for Korra or fearing for Korra, or like feeling sad for something or angry about something else. And it was just like, it wasn't as much fun to watch. Of course I got a couple of laughs out of me, but it wasn't the same joyful experience overall. Like, it was more anxiety ridden and like secondhand embarrassment ridden, in my opinion. And on top of all the problems, like I'm sure you can find millions of essays on like the kind of storytelling problems and the things that it tried to do but couldn't really pull off doing for Legend of Korra. But overall, like, to me, just my opinion of Legend of Korra is more like, for the majority of it, it wasn't as much of a fun ride to watch compared to the original. And it did a lot of good things, but at the same time, it's just like, if I'm not having fun watching it, I'd rather, watch something else that's a bit more fun. And that's sort of like a personal thing of mine, that like as time has gone on, I've been more into just watching things just to make it an escapism sort of thing. And I like really deep and interesting and things that make me think, but like there has to be a really good balance of optimism and wonder in something for me to really enjoy it, not just like all dark and scary and traumatic. though I do read my fair share of angst in the form of fanfiction. But again, fanfiction always has like a sort of more positive spin to things, I think, because like there's still a lot of love rooted in just the creation of the fanfic, that you can feel it as a reader even if it's like a sad story. But I think I've gone off on sort of a tangent. I hope you don't mind. But yeah, this artwork was kind of difficult, but at the same time it's really, satisfying to see it completed, because it took over 7 hours, and it's been a really, really long time since I've spent that long on a singular painting. But it's just I boggled it down to how unfamiliar I am to working on the iPad. But what was really amazing about this was the majority of the painting I did while I was on campus at school, which is like blowing my mind away that I was able to do such an elaborate painting while I was away from my big computer. And that was like really cool. And separate from that, it was really easy to just like get in the zone and like work like that. Kind of a lot of the things about Procreate bother me a little bit. Like I'll be trying to do an eyedropper and then you see just a random smudge of paint on the corner, even though it was supposed to be an eyedropper, and the palm rejection could be better, and all these things, and on top of all the things that I mentioned in my iPad Pro review video, link in the card if you want to check that out. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with this painting. I'm glad I had this painting experience, and I was really happy to just go right back into this series for a little bit. I did find a couple stories that I hadn't read before. I don't think any of those are going to make my recommended list, because my absolute favourite fanfics for this series I'd found like way before, and I just sort of remember them afterwards. But I did find some good ones, had a lot of fun. It was mostly like light-hearted, funny things, because that's just been my mood for the past while in terms of reading fanfiction. Something else about the painting, I had a lot of trouble with Zuko's hair. I had a lot of trouble with Zuko's pose in the beginning. I don't know if you noticed, but I sketched like 3-4 different kinds of things to do for him. But I wanted to do a little bit of a circular composition. This painting isn't really supposed to represent Zutara, the romantic ship. It's more to represent them sort of because they fought Azula together. So I think just that they have a really good fighting dynamic, and then playing with the whole red and blue scheme. And I tried to like play that up a little bit more with like Zuko and all his red clothes being on a blue background, and Katara and all her blue clothes being on a red background. And I wanted to do like a little bit of a lighting effect sort of thing, but I wasn't quite able to achieve that mainly. And I don't want to be like the sore loser in a video game that blames lag, but I kind of want to blame the fact that I was on the iPad and not in Photoshop, because I feel like I would be able to achieve that color thing that I was going for a lot easier in Photoshop. You can barely not even see the color effect that I put onto this at the end, even though I did try my best to do such things. What else is there? I already talked about Korra. I already talked about fanfiction side of things. I might include a couple crossovers, because there's some Naruto and Avatar crossovers that I read that are really good. I think one of them is called The Bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is really overpowered, but it's an interesting story, good read. What else is there? I really like the world of Avatar. I would say I would wish that I was a waterbender, and I sort of identify with waterbending, the whole fluidity and flexibility and all that sort of things, like constant motion. I kind of identify with that in terms of my life. Oh yeah, the fire and the water effects. The water came out pretty cool. The fire was an absolute train wreck, and I'm blaming Procreate for that again, because I kind of tried to do like this dry brush sort of thing, but none of the dry brushes work how you expect them to, so it's like really annoying. I don't know, but I did my best. The fire really kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say ruins it, but the fire really breaks the immersion of this piece, even though it's like you can understand it in theory. Oh yeah, and here I attached the video that Procreate exported just by itself, because I thought like it would kind of be easier to keep track of what's happening in the timeline as a whole, and Procreate does this whole videoing itself, which is too good to pass up as a speed paint maker. So you get to see like a lot faster and without zooming around and rotating the canvas, because it records your strokes and not your screen. So yeah, this is essentially the painting. This is my video. This was me gushing about Avatar the Last Airbender for 14 minutes, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. Leave a comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. Don't forget to check out the fanfics in the description, and I'll see you all next week.